Turn down. Here it is on my iPhone. And if you turn it, come on, do your little dance. There you go. If you turn it, you end up with chat below. Or if you leave it this way, the chat is on the screen right here. And you can page it up or down. If you don't see any of that, it could be that you're not logged in as with your Google account, and you need that in order to chat. So you don't have to chat to watch this, but it's a whole lot more fun, particularly if you've got a question, right? So, yeah, get a Google account. I mean, Google's watching everywhere, right? If you use the best search engine in the world, which is Google, they've already got your number. So get an account. What the heck? Might as well reap the benefits. You get free spreadsheet, free word processing out of Google Docs and Google Sheets. So there's a lot of good things to like about it. Doreen is here from Albany, New York, and Joanne is here from Freeland, Maryland. Lily says hi. Donna says she's here from North Bay, Ontario. Sherry's here from Ottawa. Leslie's from Quebec. I always got you Canadians here. I can count on you guys. You're always here. Magba says it's very sunny here. She loves it. Rennie, the password for the Zoom hook-in, there is no such thing anymore. I fixed that process, but you have to register. So you go to any of my pages, any of my home pages, either howtorughook.com or cindygayrugcooking.com, fill out the registration. It'll shoot you back an email with a link. Save that link. I'm not going to send you an email every time. So save that link, and then that'll get you in. The password is built into the link. Okay? So that's what you need to do. Yes, the order went through. Yay, Sonia's here. Oh, thanks, Magbus. Okay, we are getting good to go. We are about there. Whew. Erlene's here from Nova Scotia, another Canadian. There's a lot of Canadians here, even in the hook-in. There's always a pretty sizable group of Canadians, so I'm glad you guys are here. So as I was saying, we've been cleaning up the yard, picking up sticks, and I actually have mulch left over from last year out back, probably about 30 bags, which when you own 2 3/4 acres is not very much. But I bought it last year with good intentions. Thank God it was cypress because it doesn't decompose as fast, so it's still in good shape. And I'm able to spread that around and get an actual little bit of making this look better. But last fall, Mom got sick. I went to the nursing home or went with her to the hospital for several days. And when we went to the nursing home, back and forth, cleaning out her house because she wasn't going back to her home, and I got pneumonia. So I was down for the count. I was down for a good 2 months. So by then, the snow was flying and there was no putting mulch out. So at least I got to it now. Nancy Thompson is here. Hi, Nancy. And Carol is here. We are about ready to get started. So welcome, everybody. Today is, I gotta remember what month it is. It all looks the same. April 8th, 2020. I forget what day it was. I've got a 20 something or whatever of this COVID virus lockdown, whatever you want to call it. I'm glad you're here. This is a bonus question and answer session. I'm doing them on Mondays and Wednesdays in addition to my normal Friday lesson. Now, the Friday lesson, the replay for Friday, is only available to members of the Rug Cooking Journey. And what I do with that is I edit it so it doesn't waste a whole lot of your time. You would never see things like this at the beginning of it. I edit it down. I add extra links. If there was something I forgot to tell you, I'll either link you out to an article that I wrote before, or if it's something from Amazon that I talk about, I'll show you the link so you can go straight there and get it. There's a lot of good things. I call it enhanced lessons. So the ones that are enhanced have a little paper clip after the title of the broadcast, so you can see it there. But the Monday and Wednesday ones, such as this, These will live in YouTube. I will chop off that beginning when I'm fussing with my iPad and doing that fun stuff, but those will live here on YouTube. Um, and there we go. Other than that, if you're also available the other days of the week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I am doing a hook-in. And it's on Zoom. It's in the meeting format. So when you come in, your camera will be on, your microphone will be on. You can turn them off once you get there. But I hope you leave them on, because, or at least your camera, because it's nice to see everybody's faces. And you can just see a whole, it's kind of like the Brady Bunch. You can see a whole, several rows of people there. And we're all just hooking. And if someone's got something to say, they unmute their microphone, they carry out the conversation, then they mute and they go back to what they're doing. I've been getting a lot more hooking done. It seems like everybody really appreciates that. It's a great way for us to connect. And those will be reduced once we get back to real life, right? But they will still be available inside the rug hooking journey to members only. There's no recordings for those. What happens at the hook-in stays at the hook-in. Okay. So there's no recording, but there'll be new ones available probably on a weekly basis for members to join in, sort of as an extra bonus for being a member. And thank you for that. The members of the Rug Cooking Journey are making this free broadcast possible. So thanks for all of that. So let me get to the first question. And let me see, which one do I want to do? Oh, they both kind of hinge off the same thing. This is from Kristen, and she's asking, what helps you determine what wool number size to use? For example, do you use smaller sizes for more detailed work, like a number 6? Well, for some folks, Kristen, a number 6 is a large cut, okay? Use whatever cut works. I use, I got distracted. Pooh, I hope whoever gave me the thumbs down has left the room. Just saying, okay? It's distracting. I need to put a piece of tape over that so I don't see it. The size that you use for whatever it is you're hooking depends on what you're hooking. I, as a matter of fact, usually mix, I guess is the way to say it. I usually mix multiple cuts in any one given rug, right? So, for instance, the Village of Pemberville has everything from a number 2 to a number 8. The number 2s are not something I actually hooked with. They were something that I cut them and pulled them in after the fact. That's that whole icing on the cake thing. One of these days, somewhere at some workshop, I'm going to teach a landscape class where it's just all about bring your number 2 cutter, and we're just going to work on your already hooked landscape. But it's really a one-on-one kind of a lesson rather than a group lesson. So what I'll do often is I will cut and lay the cut pieces inside what I plan on hooking and see if it works. So for instance, if I'm trying to decide if I'm going to do 2 rows or 1 row, I'll just lay the strip down there. Does it fill it up the way I want it? 2 rows of smaller cut, it's going to look much different than 1 row of a big cut. So what look do you want? You can fill up the space the same way, right? But it's going to look different. So you have to decide what the look is. And what the look is going to be depends on what the rest of your rug is, right? You can't make blanket decisions about this kind of stuff because it's on a rug by rug basis, okay? So, that's a multiple question, but those aren't to the same topic. Catherine then asked, she goes, I am hooking using a number 6 cut. Until now, I have used a 4. Some of the smaller areas are pretty crowded. I find I am having to cut some strips narrower to fit them in. Any other suggestions, or is this the way to go? Well, Catherine, what you can do is you can anticipate that up front And when you make a couple passes with the 6, change out your cutter head, pop in the 4, and do a pass with a 4. So you have it ready. But for the most part, I use whatever cut comes off my cutter. Now, I remember being asked a question by somebody, I can't remember a name, and it was about the Townsend cutter, which is now the beeline cutter. Got too many B's in my head. The beeline cutter. And she was fussing because one strip was slightly bigger than the other. To me, that's like Yahtzee. You just won. Okay. Your strips are 2 different sizes. That's even better. Don't fuss over those teeny tiny details. One thing you can do is you can turn your loops sideways. So let me show you what I mean by that. Let's get this right side up. That'll help, right? Okay. So I'm using an app called Graphic. My pencil has lost connection. Hold on a minute while I get that. Okay. It's called Graphic, and my favorite place on here is the pencil that I'm using. And it's going to be a dark line. I want to make this line a little bit bigger. I should have checked that before I went live. Let's make it even a little bit bigger so it shows up good on the graphic. Let's get rid of all those. Missed a couple. Okay, go back to the pencil. So you're hooking and you've got a space that's really small. Let's say you've got a space that's kind of like this, and you want to hook your way out of this. Okay, there's a couple things that could happen. You might be coming in from this direction hooking, but if I'm starting something, I'll often look for a little pointy area like this. Now, I wouldn't put a tail here on the end of a star because I think it looks a little ratty. I think there's other ways that are much prettier to do a star. But if I'm filling in a background, I will often fill in that pointy place with a tail. And then the first loop might have to go sideways before I turn the loops and start hooking this way. Now, one thing I've learned to do is instead of ignoring my surroundings and just continuing on that path, a better thing to do is to come over here and put another loop sideways. Fill that area in now rather than later, okay? Because what are you going to end up with? You're going to end up with another little skinny thing. So let's take care of that. And a lot of times after I do that, depending on what it is and depending on how it's hooking, I'll often then pick up from this side and carry on with my loops. Okay? It just depends on what you're hooking, where it is, and what's around it. Okay, that's one thing we often ignore. What's around what we're hooking? Okay, so that's what I would do. You can either cut them down, and that can be as simple as just, like I said in the beginning, cut a bunch of 6s and then cut some 4s, or just sit there with your scissors and cut a little bit off the 6. Or what I find is you can do what's called tunneling, and that's where you've got a loop, and let's say you're hooking like this, and then all of a sudden you've got a skinny area, and you're going to turn the loop sideways. The problem with this is it actually creates a very recognizable pattern, and your eyes get drawn to that. So you might not want to do that, okay? That's why I'll often do, more of what's over here, where it's a little bit more jumbled, okay? Because if you all of a sudden do a bunch of rows that are tunneled, and why do they call it tunneling? If you took a knitting needle and you took that knitting needle and you popped it in here, it would go all the way through both those loops, okay? Because you're basically pulling it up and then turning it sideways. So that's how I would fill in small areas. When I'm cutting and I get to the end of a strip and I've got a little bit of wool left, and it's not a full width strip. I'm cutting, and what comes off the cutter is something smaller than what it should be. I hang on to those because if I got a little skinny space, or if I am going to fill it in later, I'm going to need those little skinny strips. So I hang on to those. Okay, so I'm going to just scan through some of this that Sonia, you're welcome for the hook-ins. It does make things easier. Okay, so I'm going to go up to the top. I'm going to look for question marks. Thank you for those of you who are putting in your questions with the question mark. It makes it easier for me to spot them. There was one. Rennie, I answered yours about the password for the Zoom hook-in. You have to register, and it'll send you back an email. Putting the password on a public website defeats the purpose. And I got a little cleaning up in that area to do, but yeah, you need to register, and then that'll take care of that. So, whoops. So Pat is asking, do you arrange your wools on the wall according to the rainbow? They're actually arranged in two different directions. Okay, so let me get out of the way a little bit. You can kind of see it. There's a lot more behind the table, but they're basically dark down at that end. So they go from dark at this end to lighter down at this end. And then I have them based on color, because there's, like white and black at the top, red, blue, green, yellow, and then below the yellow is browns or neutrals. And what I'll do then is I'll get a piece of wool, and then I just kind of like go, it goes right there. So you just have to look at it, and it's not going to be perfect because you're going to get a plaid that doesn't go anywhere. So pick a spot. So do you classify that wool as mainly green or mainly red? You don't know. Hook a texture sampler piece of it, right? And then you'll know whatever it looks like, hook, classify it that way. And then just know in the back of your head that that's where it's at. So I have one that I classify as green, but it makes a great beige. So I just know that I have to look in my light greens area in order to find it. It makes it really easy to find that. And Pat, I can't remember if you're in the rug hooking journey, but there is a video that is labeled as storage tips that has more information about that. Okay, did that. They're working on a way to pop out these questions, and I'll be so happy when they do that. So Erlene says, I have a rug that I would like to try sculpting on. Any tutorials that I can access online? Okay. Yeah, well, it's actually simpler than what you might be thinking. It takes a lot of practice. There is a video inside the Creative Stitches course. That course is part of the rug hooking journey. So you could go there and look at that sculpting. Other than that, I don't recall anything else being online. You have to have a clear vision of what you're trying to do. This would be a great time of the year to be doing that kind of thing, because you want to do it on the front porch or the back porch. You don't want to do it someplace where it's a lot of work to pick up all those scraps, because once you hook those loops high, you're going to go through and give them haircuts. And it's all about the haircut. But that wool goes everywhere. So you just have to be careful not to pack it too much. It's a fine line between not packing it enough and packing it too much. So what I recommend, like a lot of stuff that's brand new, do a little sample piece. Now, you might have a small piece of rug warp. That's my favorite backing, or linen. If you've come to any of my webinars before, you know that I like big margins on the sides of my rug. When I am designing a rug, I'll put as much as 2 feet on the outside of it, particularly if it's a larger rug and I don't know where it's going to go. Okay. And thank goodness I did, because it's kind of a little off topic, but this rug, if I had not left all that space, it wouldn't be the rug it is today, because what I had originally designed was just the dog and the cat, nothing else. So look at how many inches there are. That's probably a good foot, especially at the top. It's probably even more. I needed a lot of backing to make that rug into what it truly needed to be. And thank God I did, because otherwise I would have been struggling with it. Okay, so that gave me plenty of room. Well, one of the bonuses of leaving big margins is when you cut them off, the pieces you cut off are not garbage, right? You can still use those. They're usually like 18 inches wide. They'll still fit on your frame. So now you can make a texture sampler out of that. You can do other little samples. I don't have one for sculpting. One of these days I'll move that box a little closer, but it's good to have it out of the way during the week. But I make little samples like this. This happens to have my name on it because I always pass it around and I want to make sure it gets back to me. But I was working out some stuff for a student. This just happened to be for a Victorian house that had those little scallops, but it was so small that you couldn't see the scallops. But we wanted it to look like scallops. So I just played around with a couple different ideas on what to do. Make these up and then just keep them. They're great inspiration for anything that you want to do. I'm not exactly sure what this one is. That was probably different cut sizes. Oh, this one, it was the chain stitch, which this is also covered in the Creative Stitches course. And then this one was for lettering, so that I had something to point to when I was doing lettering. And it's great for me as a teacher because I can whip those out and answer a question for a student. But for you, you can go, oh, wait a second. Oh, now I remember how to do this. What if you stapled this to like an index card, and then the index card had the instructions on it? Okay, you would never wonder how to do that particular little item again, right? Because if you're like me, it gets harder and harder every year to remember. Okay. Michael says, I also want to learn to sculpt cherries. Actually, this is Rennie. The important thing when you're doing something like cherries is you have to do two things at once. So that's another good reason for doing a test cherry or two first, right? You're going to have to shade that cherry so it looks like a cherry, or it's just going to look like a little bumps. You want dark where it's dark. Think about how you would hook it as fine cut shaded, and then just pull all your loops really high and start cutting. Leslie says, if you're hooking an area that's an odd shape, how do you fill in the last part of it? How do you fill in the last part of it and your cut size is too large? Do you hook, oops, I need to increase the time on that. Do you hook sideways with the larger cut or use a smaller cut? It depends. If it's only a loop or two, for sure I turn it sideways. Yeah, my loops are all over the place. They come up twisted. I don't care. Okay, there's actually a YouTube video that Jane Holloway Green posted. I'm sure it's probably still there. And the only reason I'm so familiar with it is because she couldn't teach one year at ATHA, and I filled in and taught the class for her. And her YouTube video teaches you how to pull up a twisted loop. Okay? Yeah, it's the thing. When you're hooking natural organic stuff, like landscapes and trees and that kind of stuff, it actually helps if your loops are not soldier perfect. If your loops are soldier perfect, it's going to be hard to get a pretty tree. So you really need kind of like both camps. You need nice even loops for the brick on the house, and then you need them all crazy and wild to do the tree. So, yeah, if you've got weird little areas to fill in, fill in. One thing that I am in the process of the final bit of putting in is the videos for this little project. The pattern is there. It's inside the rug cooking journey, and this is called Little Flower. And I filmed every minute of me hooking this. And then what I'm going to do is the parts when I'm not talking, I'm going to shrink it down and hook really, really fast. And then you can listen as I think out loud about how I choose my colors and what direction I'm hooking in and that kind of thing. And that might help for that kind of thing if you're really struggling with that. Oh, Diana, I must have went past your question. I'll have to scan back through it. It's hard for me to see these questions. I wish there was an easier way, but for right now, there's not. I've got some inklings, some rumblings that there might be some improvements to the software that'll make those questions a little bit easier. Like I said, I need to change the time on that. After hooking a flower, do you outline with one row of background before moving on to the next flower? Yes. In fact, Nancy, I recommend that the second strip of wool that you hook with is background. Okay, so you're going to hook the outside edge of a flower. Second strip is going to be background. You don't even have that flower done. You want that background in right away, because if you're married to that background, it'll tell you if that blue's okay. But if you're not married to that background and you love the blue, it might tell you that the background's not working, and you'll fix it sooner rather than later. The other thing that I recommend for background is something I call the 5-strip rule. That's 10. 5-strip rule. And in the 5-strip rule, what you do is every time you get up and leave your chair. Okay, so I'm out of tea. I go make more tea. I come back. I hook 5 strips of background. The phone rings. I stop. I come back. I hook 5 strips of background. Every strip of background you hook today is a strip you don't have to hook tomorrow. I never, ever, ever have a rug where all I have to do is hook background. It just doesn't happen, because I know I'm going to get bored to tears. I know I'm not going to finish it. So I usually will hook part of a motif, and that's the last thing I end up hooking. I'm not hooking background as my last thing. It's usually filling in the motifs with colors that I've already figured out what they're going to be. Okay. Would you explain how to use your jigsaw puzzle piece method of hooking backgrounds when you have small pieces to fill in around motifs? Yeah, that's a good thing. Let's do that. Let's go back to this little camera. Wake this baby up. Okay. Well, what's nice with this particular app is I can choose the selector tool, or I can choose up here the layers, and I'm just going to turn that layer off and start a new layer. So there's different ways of managing it, but that's the quick way of getting rid of it and getting something going. Here, I'm going to choose on the pencil. I'm set to red. I'm going to change that to black. And what was your question? How do I use the jigsaw puzzle method when you have small places? Okay, so let's say we're hooking something like this, right? And let's say, I don't know, this is a bird. What else can we put here? We can put a tree. Okay, and now it's time to hook background around that. Let me do I'm going to do something else to force. What can I do? Let's just do another flower here. Okay. Now we're hooking background. And what I always do is I will do one row of background around everything. And that usually happens while I'm hooking, right? Now, a neat trick that I use a lot is to make this first row of background something slightly different than what the rest of your background is. So if the rest of your background is like a medium blue, maybe what goes as the first row of background is a dark blue. Okay, I use that in a lot of my rugs with black and brown. But one of my favorite examples, and I wish I had a picture of it. One of these days I'll ask her for a picture. A friend of mine, Pat, hooked one. It had a tan background, but her first row of outline was yellow. And they were very carefully coordinated values. They were very similar in values, but that yellow, you didn't really even see it unless you were looking for it. But it looked like there was a light on under the motif. It was so cool. So, and then let's say over here, we would do a row around everything, right? So I'm assuming, April, that this is the kind of weird little areas that you're talking about where it ends up so small. Now let me get different colors so you can see it. Now what you want to avoid doing, do not do this. You do not want to do this. Okay, and why not? That's way too regular. Okay, so what I usually do with those instead is I will come over to the other side and I'll on purpose follow that side for a while, then come over here and then bounce back right away. And then maybe come over here. And then maybe because I want to use up the strip, I'll just come in here and hook. And then later, when I come back with another strip of wool, I will then use that strip to fill in these little areas. And hook and hook and hook. And then something even different there. I like this style of hooking because you can literally do these little jigsaw puzzle pieces, and you want to be sure that they're thick and thin. You know, there's no like this. That will create a pattern and our eyes will go straight to that. And you don't want that. You want it to be very irregular, different sizes, different shapes. If you have to, get a printout of your pattern and draw it on your pattern first in pencil or marker or whatever. And then draw it in marker on your pattern and then hook on that line. And eventually you'll get to the point where you won't have to hook it. Okay? But what you're looking for are these long stretched out pieces and then shorter little things in little places like this where they almost turn back on themselves. And then that creates a little pocket of an area to hook in. I will try to have the entire rug covered with these little jigsaw puzzle pieces before I'm ready to go on and do anything else. There is inside, I think it's in several courses. I think it's in the color planning course, but I think it's also in the basics course. The basics is part of the rug cooking journey. The color planning is not. That's a separate course. But the basics course is part of the rug cooking journey. And in there is a PDF that you can print out that is about the size I would actually hook a wide cut in. So you can see the scale of it. I mean, it's kind of hard to see here. You can kind of tell. I mean, this is roughly, this is the larger tablet. So it's, the size of a piece of paper. So you can kind of get an idea of how big it is. And what I'll do is I'll put this in below the replay in the rug cooking journey, and you can print this out since you saw it created. And then you can see it up close. April, if that doesn't answer your question, just get back with me, okay? I need a drink. Beverly says some wool fabric is very fuzzy on one side and is more difficult to cut and frays even after washing. Where'd that go? Definitely increasing that time. And when it's been in the dryer, it loses a lot of fuzz. Well, it's sort of random on which ones lose a lot of fuzz. It has nothing to do with it being fuzzy on one side and not on the other. They all lose fuzz. My dryer lint is pretty remarkable. One thing to be careful of is who's curating the wool you're buying. Are you buying the wool at Joann's because you saw a bolt of wool and it said 100% wool, so you bought it? That wool's not necessarily intended for rug hooking. It's meant to never be in the washer. I think the wool for rug hooking that's been woven specifically for rug hookers is different than the clothing wool. So it's a little bit higher quality, holds up a little bit better. But if it's something you've already got, you'll have to deal with it. If it's difficult to cut, I would begin to suspect some synthetics. It's hard to say. I would suspect synthetics in that fiber. And the way you test for that is you get a little cup and you fill it up, with a little bit of bleach. And you're going to put a little square, like a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square into the bleach. And then a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square of something that 100% is wool. Put them both in there, ideally different colors because it makes it easier to identify which is which. And then go away and then come back and look. If both pieces are completely gone, then it's 100% wool. If the one is wool is gone and the other one left like a netting or threads, then it's got a synthetic in it. And then you know that you're dealing with a synthetic. But that's usually what happens. Not always, but that could be what you're experiencing, Beverly. I'm looking for question marks. So if you don't put a question mark in, I can't see it because I have to scan really fast. Diana is saying, my question, how far to fold the piece of wool down on the top of the pencil pouch, and what do you do with the side ends? Do you cover grommets when sewing on? It kind of depends. There's two different ways. This is what she's talking about. It's this little pencil pouch. I do not have any more of this style. And I have just a scant few of these. So I brought this one over so I can demo on that one. So your hooking's going to go here. And you can design your hooking to end here, or you can design your hooking to come all the way to the top. It's completely up to you. So what I typically do is, once I know where my hooking's going to end, if it's going to end down here, I'll sew this on the backing and sew it down like that on the backing, and then I'll hook up to it. And then by the time I'm done and I'm ready to finish the outside edge, this is already sewn on. Takes care of that problem, right? But if not, you'll just have to fuss with it and get it close. And then I usually, like this one, it starts here at the top, and then it came over and I covered up, the grommets because I didn't want to see them. I had originally played around with the idea of folding it down and finishing it like this, but I had already designed it and hooked it to go over the entire thing, so I couldn't do that. So what I did then is I've got my piece here. It's already finished. The bottom is all whipped, right? It's got this loose piece of wool on the top of it. And I don't cut anything till I've got it stitched in place. What I'll usually do is stitch the hooked area to the pencil pouch first, just so it don't move, okay? And I'll find the center on here. I'll find the center on here. I'll sew one way, and then I'll sew the other way. And I'm talking big 1/2 inch stitches, and I'm just going through this little fabric, I don't know what you would call that, this little seam area. And then I come up in between the seam in between the whipping and the hooking. And then I just continue that way all the way around, then go back to the center and do my other side. So now it's attached. This is attached to the backing. And then I just fold it over and then fold under the edge if you've got enough wool, because I like a nice clean edge. And then I stitch that down. And you just got to be careful not to interfere with the zipper operation. So what I try to do is I try to put my needle through one of the threads that are there and then catch the wool, and then through the thread and catch the wool. And that makes that a little bit easier. On the ends, I've done it different ways. I did it different on both sides here. It just kind of depends on how it ends up, because they both end up pretty different. They are quite different. This one I ended up whipping this last probably 3/8 of an inch into this fabric, into the sachet fabric on the back, and I did on this side too, only because I couldn't get a nice tight fold there, and I had the whipping yarn there, so I just continued on a little bit on that. But that's where I went with that. So you have to fuss with it. You have to play with it. Leave the piece long enough. Leave the wool long enough. I'd rather cut it off later than realize that it's too short. And you never know exactly what you're going to need until it's gone. And Sonia is saying wool for suiting is not good to use. It's worsted. Worsted is the worst. That's the way to remember it. And is spun for making clothing. Do not use. Absolutely. Not all 100% is 100% good for rug hooking. I agree there. Make sure you know where you're getting your wool. Just make sure you know where you're getting your wool. I could buy wool that is much, much cheaper than what I pay for it, but I run the risk that I might end up with a couple hundred yards of something I can't use. And I'd rather pay several dollars more to know that every single, inch that I buy is rug hooking worthy. So trust your suppliers. Lily is asking, how much is the journey and how would I join? You would go to, you would go to, let me type this out, how to rug, whoa, hold on. My screen went completely nuts. How to rug hook cook.com. You would go to this website, howtorughook.com, and let me find a place to put it where you can see it. And on that front page, it has an icon that's divided into 4 little areas. And it says the rug hooking journey, and that's how you would buy into that. Right now, the price is, I think, $24.99 a month. If you join for 6 months, you'll get a break on that price, and it'll be cheaper per month, but you have to pay for 6 months all at once. And if you do it for a whole year, I know the savings on that's $100. So most people end up joining for a whole year. And the reason I give you such a big price break is because I have 1/12 of the accounting to do. So it's a lot easier for me. So what you can do if you're unsure is you can join for 1 month, get into it, look around, push all the buttons, kick the tires, and then you go, yeah, I want to stay here. I want to lock in those savings, because if I raise the prices, you'll have to pay the higher price. But if you join and lock the price in, you keep that price no matter what I raise the price to. So there are some people paying cheaper, but they joined 18 months ago. Okay. So if you decide to go up to the yearly plan and lock in that savings, if you do that upgrade from within your account, don't do it from that website, okay? Go to the dashboard and then go to your account, and there'll be links in the sidebar that'll say upgrade to yearly, upgrade to 6 months. Click on that. And what it'll do is it'll take what you've got left on your monthly and apply the remaining to your year and reduce the price of a year. And then you lock in that lower per day savings. So that's the way to do that. Okay. Yes, there's classes on there. There's the Creative Stitches class. The Little Flower is one that I'll be doing. Right now, the bulk of it is still the replays from lessons. Well, this is more question and answer, but all the lessons that I teach on Friday, those are recorded and posted into the Rug Cooking Journey. This video will be in the Rug Cooking Journey. I'll edit it down. And I'll take out things such as this conversation that the people who are already members don't need, and it'll make it a little bit faster for them to watch videos. And then I add extra links to anything that they might need to make it a little bit easier for them to find some. Okay. Did I answer everybody's question? The little question marks at the beginning, it helps, but I'm still worried that I might have missed somebody. So if I missed you, type it in really, really fast. I'm going to take a sip. Okay, and if you're one of the people who are here and you're wondering, I've got a question, but I can't type it in, to leave a comment on YouTube, either during the live or even after, you have to be logged into YouTube. So if you don't have a Google account, most of us have Google accounts and we don't even notice that you have to be logged into YouTube. But you do have to be logged into YouTube. What I recommend is subscribe. It's going to be right below this video. Hit that subscribe button, and right next to it is a bell. Click that bell, because if I decide to go live at an unannounced time, YouTube will notify you. You'll get a little notification, and then you can watch me live when I'm doing something completely different, okay, than one of these lessons. So that's it for today. Tomorrow is, I have to look at my calendar. I have to look at the screen to figure out what day it is. Tomorrow is Thursday. Thursday at 4 o'clock, we have the hook-in. You do have to register for that in order to get the right link. If you've got a link from before, it will not work. If you've got a password from before, it will not work. You have to register and then get that email from me that'll give you the link. And then once you have that, then all you have to do every week is click on it. It does require a small app called Zoom, which if you don't have it, you'll have to download it. You only have to do it once. If you get totally stuck on that and you can't figure that out, give me a call. I'll walk you through it. But I hope you'll join me. It's great fun. So far, there's plenty of room in the room. I am limited in how many can attend. So someday it'll be too full. But for now, there's plenty of room. So I hope you'll join me. And I'll see you all tomorrow at 4 and right back here Friday at 4 o'clock for my usual Friday lesson. So that's it, everybody. Bye for now.